Hello, you are on the Ocean Story channel. Today I want to tell a story that impressed me. My mom was having an affair. She met her future husband in a store. From then on, their relationship started to become more serious. So my mom divorced my dad when I was 10 years old. She and my dad divorced because there was no love between them. My parents had been living with each other for a long time just for the sake of me. So everything was coming to a logical end in their relationship. I don't like the fact that my parents got divorced. It's really not nice for a little guy. Although my dad said a long time ago that he lost his feelings for my mom Lily. 2 years after my dad's divorce, Grayson and my mom Lily got divorced. My mom realized that her new boyfriend Levi was worthy. So they got married and are chewing the fat together in a nice house, which has 2 floors and is on the outskirts of town. I lived with my dad, but I often came to my mom and her husband Levi. My mom's husband was very cool. I always thought that if there was a stepfather in the family, it was a good thing. He must be bad and negligent. But that's not the case with Levi. I understand why my mom, Lily, would have dumped this guy. Levi was an assistant director in an advertising company. He had a great sense of humor. Levi was always sensitive to me. We could talk to him on various topics. My mother's husband told me a lot of interesting things. I was never upset that my mom was gone. She married this man. The story with my dad Grayson and his wife is not so smooth. If my mother's husband took care of me, my stepmother Hannah was indifferent to me. For her, I was like I didn't exist, especially when it came to my problems. Hannah had this attitude only towards me. She loved my dad. Hannah showed care and attention to Grayson. Of course, my stepmother helped me with some small things. I just wasn't important to her. Hannah didn't pay attention to me for more than 5 minutes a day. She wasn't interested in my life or my studies. So it was not surprising that I went to my mom's house more often, because there was a Levi's there and people were interested in me there. And no one bothered me with their inappropriate questions. My dad was a little worried that I liked my mom more, and especially that I preferred my stepfather, not my real dad. For 4 of the 7 days, I stayed with my mom and Levi's. My dad took me to his place only for 3 or sometimes 2 days. I was very annoyed by Hannah's attitude towards me. I saw how unnecessary and unimportant I was to her. Over time, I developed an aversion to her presence anywhere. Today, I am many years old. I have a son who is 10 years old. My wife and son have a good relationship with my mom and Levi. We spent a lot of time together. That strengthened our relationship. But with the dad's family, we had little time. We visited the Grayson family once every 2 months. When my mom's family was with Lily, we visited several times a month. The other day was our son's birthday. My stepfather became friends with my son, so he agreed to take the children in his big house. Levi also helps a lot with making decorations, so that the kids have lots of photos from the celebration. For our son Isaac, it was important that all the guests came in a certain style. Isaac is a young intuitive. He loves to make videos. So his request regarding the clothes was understandable. We gathered all my parents in one place, and we talked about the clothes we should wear. We wanted our son Isaac to feel like a director on his birthday. I pointed out who should wear what, so that everything would be just right. My wife and I had to dress like modern people, and my stepfather and mother had to wear all black. And for my dad and his wife Hannah, there was a task to dress in business casual and look a little strange. Everyone seemed to understand, and there were no difficulties. My father answered that, "I don't want to dress the way someone else dictates, especially if he has to act or look strange." I told my dad that everything had already been agreed upon, and our son is waiting for it. Grayson was quiet for a second, but he began to say that he wanted to come in a new shirt and shorts. And in general, such a stupid outfit was not in his plans. Dad's wife began to take the same position. She started criticizing the idea of dressing for the celebration. My wife could not stand this attitude. She started saying that Grayson and Hannah, they are acting like stubborn sheep, impossible to talk to. My dad started to make excuses that he didn't mind being at the event, but not in the stupid suit we're talking about. I took my wife by the hand and asked her to speak a little more softly, because my dad has been thinking only about his own well-being all his life. He couldn't care less about the rest of the family. My dad exploded and started talking. How can I not care about anyone? What about you and your stepmother Hannah? I gave you all my time, spent money for your happiness. To this, I told Grayson's dad that it wasn't quite true. He was spending money on entertainment for himself. I was there for him, but I was the last one to be thought of. All he was thinking about, how to have fun with his girlfriend Hannah, so that I would not interfere with them. Dad said I was not a grateful son, that I didn't appreciate the good things he gave me. My dad's wife Hannah didn't keep quiet either. She called us stupid and stubborn. Hannah told us not to think about visiting them again. After all, we are strangers to them now. We really didn't talk after that. Lillian, what a strange story. It sounds like nothing bad should have happened, but your dad did. He decided to ruin everything because of his ego. I guess your dad didn't think about you. You were rather raised by your stepfather and your mother. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people like him. Your father allows himself to behave as he pleases. He does not want to admit his own faults. You and your wife should be happy that finally such negative people will not be in your life. Gabriel, you've had a pretty aggressive conversation. Your dad, Grayson, hasn't really been in your life. You were like an expensive set of dishes for him to use when the most important people came to visit, and now he decided to dictate his rules and desires. After all these years of forgetting about you, especially since you didn't ask your dad. You didn't ask him to help with the decorations, just to dress properly. It turns out that Grayson was not involved in the planning of the party, so he can't say anything negative. You shouldn't invite them to any events at all. Addison, your dad and his wife, they are real assholes. They only think about themselves. Grayson allowed himself to dictate the rules and insult you and your wife. You should erase their numbers and never talk to them again. They must have self-esteem issues. If an ordinary outfit for your dad and his wife caused problems, only your mom and her husband Lily cared about you, and your real dad just didn't care about you. It was easier for him to have you live with your mom more. The decision he made has consequences, so let him shut his mouth and come respectfully in a suit, because it's not normal for a good dad to try to get rid of his young son on vacation. I hope you never talk to your dad. Julian, man, one thing is strange to me. Your dad made the decision to leave his family so easily. He found himself a toxic girlfriend who never thought about you at all. Grayson, he started thinking only about his new relationship. His decisions ruined your childhood. Your mother, Lily, is clearly angry with your father because of his unbearable behavior. You have so many problems that are unlikely to be solved. Aubrey, why is your father suddenly so interested in you? To come to your son's party, isn't that his style? To ignore everyone but himself? I don't know what he was thinking. Maybe he wanted to make amends with you. That's why your father decided to come to the party with his wife. Somehow I think Grayson wanted to be better than he was, but he failed miserably. Have you ever talked to your dad, Grayson? Why is he happy with that woman? She's not as great as he thinks she is. Or maybe your dad just doesn't give a damn about other people's opinions. Next story is about my younger brother's family. A month ago, my brother Julian broke one of his arms. He works from home and has his own office. The office is quite spacious, and there are a lot of Julian's personal belongings. However, my brother did not know what to do with himself during his recovery. So Julian decided that he could clean up the office. It was not urgent for him before, but it was necessary. He asked me to help him once. I refused because I had to go on a trip for work. My brother was upset and asked his wife Ellie to help, but she refused him. Ellie was busy with business and children. Ellie told my brother she would help, but later. My brother is not a very patient person, so Julian decided to take matters into his own hands, or rather, into his own hand. He started cleaning the table and collecting all kinds of garbage. That same day, his dad and some cousins came over. They were surprised to see Julian cleaning with one hand. Julian's dad asked him to calm down. After all, you can clean your office later. Julian never listened to my dad. He climbed on a tall cabinet to get something. It so happened that Julian lost his balance. He fell right on the table, and the table broke in half, and my brother injured his ribs. Now, he walked around with a bandage over his entire chest and a plaster cast on his arm. A few minutes before the fall, Julian's father asked, why didn't he wait for his wife to help? Julian said his wife was busy with the kids and the business, so he needed to do it himself. My dad scolded Julian for doing it again. He doesn't want to wait, He needs everything to be done right away. My dad also scolded my brother's wife, Ellie, that she couldn't spare 20 minutes to help her husband. Then my brother scolded his wife, that because she didn't help, his dad was angry and upset because of the injury Julian got, and they fought like that for several days. Julian saw the fault in his wife, Ellie, and the wife herself told Julian's husband that she had more important things to do. Julian was angry with his wife because she could have helped. In the end, I understand my brother. Julian asked his wife to help him more than once, but she could not find the time to do it. That's why my brother was offended, and he decided to do everything himself, so as not to bother his wife Ellie, and the consequences of these actions are well known. Anthony, your brother is mistreating his wife Ellie, since it is not her fault that he fell. It was his decision to reach for that thing, and as a result, your brother fell. So it's not appropriate to scold Ellie. It was Julian's wish, and he paid for it with his ribs. I'm sure it was not urgent to clean the office. It was your brother's ego or his sadness. The second reason why Julian is a jerk, he probably went around telling everyone how poor he is, how no one wants to help him with his office. Julian is probably glad that at least he's to blame, but his wife, Ellie, has suffered morally. Stella, I think Ellie's wife herself is guilty. After all, she heard her husband's requests many times. He wanted someone to help him clean the office, but Ellie didn't want to help her husband. That's why her husband did the cleaning himself. But in vain, Julian, he climbed somewhere high. Here his fault for the fall is greater than his wife's. Therefore, there will not be much excuse for the wife. Jackson, what did Ellie say to her father-in-law? That it was her son's fault that he climbed and fell. She justified herself, even though it was her fault. So I'm ashamed of Ellie. By her decision, she set Julian up. What kind of a wife is she? She can't give her husband a little attention and help him. It turned out that only Julian was to blame for that situation. But in fact, your brother's wife is also to blame. Natalie, I'll give you $100 on that. That Julian went around whining to everyone in a coma. After all, no one has time or care about his affairs. Now, the man is lying in bed like a child, and he is happy that he got the attention he wanted. Lincoln, you should talk to your wife to explain to her how important it was for you to clean your office. Your brother should tell Ellie that the simple excuse is a type. I don't have time, let's do it some other time. Not acceptable to him. After all, to say the words, let's do it later, it means now that I will think about it, but I will not do it. It's not important to me, so you can wait a bit. This is not the act of a good wife. I want to tell you one more story. I have been living with my boyfriend for several years. We have a big family as we both have children. His children are 13 and 14 years old. Mine are a bit younger. They are 11 and 10 years old. I don't have a permanent job at the moment. My mother was injured, so I take care of her. It is not known how long it will last. Therefore, in our family, my husband has a stable income. He has a good job as an engineer. That allows him to support our entire family. I have some savings from my previous job, so we do not live in poverty. Now my contribution is more in raising children. In general, everything suits me and my husband. 3 weeks ago, we were going to go to my husband's brother's house because he had a wedding. My husband's brother Matthew lives 200 miles away from us. Our car is currently being repaired, so we had to think about how to get there. My husband, Owen, found a bus route. It wasn't that far of a drive and the bus was comfortable. When we arrived, we took a taxi to the bus station. My husband went to give the tickets to the driver, and I packed the bags in the trunk. A little later, it became known that a lot of people had bought tickets for the flight. So my husband assigned my sons to another bus. It was something like economy class. That bus was from 2003 years ago. It was 5 times worse than the one my husband's children and I were in. My husband came and started to put the children on. I saw how he was putting his children in an elite bus, and he showed my children to go to a worse bus. I stood there with my cheeks in a bunch. I couldn't even speak for the first few seconds. My husband continued to pack things for my sons. I asked him what he was doing. Owen said that everything was fine. There is nothing wrong with the children going on another bus. They just won't be able to turn on the air conditioning on the way and take a lying down position. It's not critical. So I asked my husband, is this fair? His reaction was immediately aggressive. He said that thanks to him we could go. He was the one who got the money for the trip with his smart head. So I should calm down and get on the stupid bus and just go to the holiday. When I heard his opinion about it, I went to the bus to see my sons. I took them by the hands and took out their things, and we went home. Owen told me to stop immediately and to stop organizing this kindergarten. I ignored him and just walked to the taxi. How could I want to go to a holiday with such events? Especially with my husband's attitude towards children. Let them celebrate the wedding of my husband's brother without me and my sons. My younger son was scared because he never had to go anywhere without me. My husband did not decide anything with me, so he and his children went to his brother's house. When I got home, I saw that my husband had called me 16 times in an hour. Owen also wrote several messages on Instagram. All of them had words. How ungrateful and bad I am. When my husband came to visit his brother, Owen made him write several messages on his own behalf. As if he were his brother, he was trying to convince me to change my mind and come, so that I wouldn't act like a proud goat, and not to teach my children this. Then my husband's father called me and told me that my behavior was bad, that I was acting like a little girl, not an adult, intelligent woman, that I was ready to miss such an important event as a wedding because of some bus that takes 4 hours to get there. I listened to this in silence. I didn't say a word. It was all absurd to me. Should I have listened to the words of my husband and his father? Should I have just gone with them? After all, I had postponed some plans for this trip, and I had to miss one event for the children, and that's how it ended. So my kids were a little upset. Chloe, I agree 100%. This is absurd. I am very surprised how your husband did it so easily. He didn't even tell you. Does Owen really think his children are more deserving, and yours are not so important to him? This is not acceptable. It is not acceptable to divide children within the same family. You should talk to them about this situation. It shouldn't be like this. And what his father told you, it's a shame. Apparently, your husband's dad also likes to divide people. Your husband, Owen, must have picked up that from his dad. You acted like a mother who cares about her children. You deserve respect. Wyatt, he's not going to be a good father much longer because what he did with the kids showed your man inside. A real dad would sacrifice his seat to make his kids feel comfortable. And what does Owen do instead? That's right, he just prioritizes his kids. This guy divides children into some kind of status. This is not the norm. I even broke off a relationship with such a person. Maybe it's not the first time he's done this to your kids. What else does your husband do to make your children feel included, that they are inferior to his wonderful children? Have you put up with his actions towards your children all the time? I think, after this situation, you have thought about this guy. After all, it's hard to call him a man. If I were you, I would have been in your place when this idiot arrived. My things and my children were simply not at home. This man needs to think about what he is doing and not put someone else first. That would be a good lesson for Owen. John, it's definitely worth finding people. Someone to help take care of your sick mom and sit with the kids. Then you can work and not be dependent on anyone who doesn't appreciate your children. Maybe this asshole likes to abuse children. You should leave him alone. Next story. I am 37 years old now. I have a wonderful son, Jack. He is 17 years old. He is finishing his studies and has a girlfriend. I broke up with Jack's dad 6 years ago. He didn't see any sense in our relationship. After that, I found a nice guy, Luke. We've been together for 2 years now, but for a long time we lived apart. 6 months ago, I decided to introduce Luke to my son Jack. My son's girlfriend, Layla, is the same age as my son. They met her at a spider exhibition. My son has a terrarium at home, so they often sit in my son's room and look at the spider, and they have personal conversations. I don't interfere much in their relationship. I don't set strict boundaries, because I know that my son will not offer sex to a girl. I have talked to my son about this topic, so there is no reason to be afraid. He is a healthy and smart guy. He has never had any difficulties with this. Moreover, it is important for young people to have their own space. I know this from my own experience. When you trust your child, the child's respect for you grows to the heavens. Once we went on a family picnic in tents for a few days, but my boyfriend was worried about one thing. It was that my son and his girlfriend would sleep together the whole night in the same tent. My boyfriend even felt bad about it, that the children closed the door when they were at home, so the roof of his tent was blown off. We lit a fire for the night, and in the quiet evening we sat by the fire. The whole situation was romantic. It started to get dark and we went to our tents. My boyfriend Luke couldn't find a place to sleep. He went outside and sat down in front of my son's tent. Luke tried to eavesdrop on what was going on with the kids. However, he heard nothing but talk about spiders and the new TV series. He sat and listened to their conversations for about half an hour. Having heard nothing bad, he returned to my tent. Luke is very surprised by my approach, and all the time he is trying to catch Jack and Layla in the act. The next morning, my boyfriend talked to my son, Luke, telling him that he shouldn't lock the entrance to their tent with the girl. It looked strange and suspicious to him. He also said that it was dangerous to sleep with a girl in the tent. So Luke, all day long, walked around Jack and Layla's tent. Like a bodyguard, he was there. Luke, more than once, unexpectedly looked into their tent, each time making up stupid excuses as to why he was there. During the whole day, my boyfriend did this about 6 times. Eventually, my son got tired of this behavior, so Jack came to me and told me everything. I was a little surprised that my boyfriend had crossed the line so much, so I immediately talked to Luke. I told him, I don't mind them being there together because I'm sure they keep the boundaries and they won't take their clothes off. Maybe they can hold hands. Or the girl can lie on my son's stomach. So I asked my boyfriend not to interfere with the children's rest. You have to have trust and respect. But my boyfriend still did not agree with my words. Luke said the following, that he was uncomfortable when teenagers were left alone, whether it's at home in a room or outdoors in a tent, and he also has some experience. That's why his opinion is important. Then my boyfriend began to give his arguments, but I knew some things for sure. My son does not accept Luke because of this stupid behavior. Another reason is that my son is uncomfortable. When Luke is around, he always wants to catch him. Finally, my son will have no respect for my boyfriend. If he behaves like this, and Luke's argument that children shouldn't be left alone in a locked room is not true for me, and his words that I don't know what the children are doing in the room, there is an inappropriate attitude towards teenagers, those who play harmonicas. So, when my son's girlfriend Layla says she's pregnant, you shouldn't be surprised. I gave my boyfriend clear answers to his words. Points where he has a misconception. The first point, his words sound like this, as if he wants to control everything, and every time my boyfriend violates the children's personal space, he tries to show that he is older and shows it, that he is in charge of them. The next point is that he must not violate personal boundaries. You make children uncomfortable, so soon they won't stay at home at all. They will go out and play somewhere else, so something can definitely happen between them. After all, there are some boundaries in the family that are strictly observed. The last one is in the relationship between me and my son. I gave him a certain amount of freedom so that he could feel himself a grown-up and responsible man. That's why every time his girlfriend comes over, my son proves his maturity. That's why I know that my son has a high level of responsibility. In the end, our words started in a circle. Luke did not want to hear my position. He thinks that his method and opinion is very correct because I give my son too much freedom, and it can lead to bad consequences. And because of that, Luke doesn't think I'm a normal mom. I'm tired of my boyfriend not listening to me and not trying. I want him to understand a little bit how right it is to give young people their space. So I told my boyfriend, if we don't stop this meaningless conversation, tomorrow we're all going home and I don't want to talk to him because he is making me look stupid in this situation. He thinks that only he is right and I have to listen to his advice about my son. The next morning we woke up and I saw Luke's car was gone. He had just left. I wasn't too upset because I needed a break from all the talk. But on the other hand, I was sorry. I talked to my friends about it. They said that it turned out a little bit bad because my boyfriend took off and left and I haven't seen him since. Zoe, well, let's start with the main thing. Your boyfriend, Luke, has known his son for just 6 months, and now your boyfriend has started to dictate the rules of what is allowed for your son. This is not normal. Your boyfriend has not yet earned the necessary status during this time. I understand how Luke would pick on children for certain actions, but he just does stupid things because, with his behavior, your boyfriend has crossed all the boundaries and limits in his relationship with Jack. I think it's great that you're not together anymore, After all, Luke has started to think of himself as a dad to your son, and he did whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. Such a person is not worth clinging to. Moreover, you have been in a relationship with him for a long time, but your boyfriend never thought about it. Take a serious step in your relationship. You've even lived apart for 70% of your relationship. Your boyfriend was just playing with you. Jaden, this guy's just gone off the deep end. He was meddling too much. This is not acceptable for a grown man. So for Luke to walk away is good for all of you. The boy and his girlfriend will finally be left alone, and you won't have any stupid conversations. Next story. My friend has a son who is 8 years old. My friend, Joshua, asked me to watch his son, Christopher. Joshua is going to go to another city for a few days. I agreed because I was free those days. I also have an 8-year-old son, Andrew. The children are friends with each other, so I went with him. At my friend's house, the afternoon passed quickly. The children played in the room, and I did my small work on the laptop. Then at lunch I cooked some delicious pasta. The kids went to play in the yard, and I watched a movie on my laptop. I looked into Joshua's room, and it turned out he had 2 aquariums there. One had about 7 small fish in it. The other aquarium had a small turtle in it. For some time I sat and looked at those creatures. The next morning my friend Joshua arrived. He saw something that made him very sad. My son Andrew pulled out the turtle and it was crawling on the floor. Joshua told me to immediately put the turtle in the aquarium. He did not warn me about anything, so I had no idea that something like this could happen. His upset was so strong, it's very hard to describe. Then my friend Joshua said that this turtle was important to him because his dad had given it to him before. Before he died a year ago, Joshua had no idea that this could happen. That turtle is very fragile. It has never been outside the aquarium. It is dangerous for a turtle to be outside the aquarium because the air from the room can kill it. That's why Joshua became so upset and aggressive. I was surprised that an ordinary turtle could be so important. I had to apologize to Joshua for what my son Andrew had done if it was so important to my friend. Then we are really to blame for that situation. However, my friend could not resist a little bit, and he said offensive words to my son. Of course, I didn't like it, but I realized that Joshua was just not himself at the time. So I let it go and didn't think about it. I tried to console him, but it was no use. My son and I left before things got even worse, but the guilt is just endless inside me. Leah, I think you should have taught your son Andrew better, that you shouldn't touch other people's things, especially if it's a turtle that lives in an aquarium. You'll have to apologize to your friend in a nice way. Maybe buy some food for the turtle, and it will be a very good lesson for your son. Hazel, it's strange that your friend Joshua didn't tell you about the turtle. If it is so important to him, he should have taken better care of its safety. After all, he knew that there would be children at home, and the presence of children makes everything dangerous. Violet, one thing is strange to me. Why did the son of a friend of Christopher didn't do anything to save the turtle? I'm sure he was there at the time, but Christopher was so involved in the process of playing with the turtle, he even forgot that he had to protect it and not to play with it so irresponsibly. So Joshua, you should ask your son what he was doing at that moment. Theodore, I completely understand why your friend is reacting this way. There is nothing to blame him for. That creature was one of the important memories of his deceased father. Joshua's action is understandable. I would have reacted the same way, perhaps even worse, because it is clear that for him it was not just a turtle. You shouldn't have watched those stupid movies, and you should have watched your children, and it's your fault. You may think that your son is to blame, but this is not the whole truth in this situation.